My name is Jocelyn Vare, and I'm very happy that you're here today. Thank you very much. I am a former city councilor here in Fishers, and I'm always very motivated to help citizens be informed and have their voice heard when big and little decisions are made in our city. So thank you for being here. The purpose of our gathering today is to share information, get some questions answered, and help all of you have your voice heard as this decision is made in our community. So thank you for your time tonight. Here's our agenda for this evening. After my little welcome, I'm going to share a few slides about the current housing status in Fishers. That gives us all just a level playing field about kind of where we are right now and where we anticipate the housing market going. Then we'll speak specifically about the proposed ordinance, and we have that language from the City of Fishers to share with you. And then we'll have our panel discussion and our Q&A. So that's where your note cards are going to come in handy. So as we move on, let's please feel free to write your questions, and then we'll collect those and ask our great panel to help us answer those questions. We'll also be capturing feedback, ideas, suggestions, and questions to share with the City of Fishers too. And I'll share with you how you can have your voice heard as well. And then next steps, we'll share what are the kind of sequence of events as the ordinance moves through the legislative process with the City Council. So without any further ado, let me move forward with our welcome. So again, our purpose today is just inform. We're going to be very fact-based. Several citizens in our community have done some great research, gathering data so that it can be presented to you so you can learn a little bit more about not only the housing market, but the impact of the proposed ordinance. We welcome all different perspectives. We're here to share feedback and ideas. And again, next steps so you know how to get involved. All right, let's talk about the current status of Fishers housing. So this is going to be fast and furious. We're going to go through this because I think your questions is really why we're all here. So about our Fishers housing status currently, our base for this is the City of Fishers back in 2022 contracted with an outside consultant and created a very robust housing study. I was on the City Council at that time, and it is an amazing, tremendous document. It is findings from that consultant that we are springing from tonight. So we know from this housing study that they looked out at that point several years out to the year 2040, so 15 years from now. The City of Fishers is going to need 13,500 additional housing units. That is strictly based upon just population and trends and what is expected with that amazing number crunching. We have a housing deficit. Very specifically, they broke it down for us. 10,100 more owner-occupied homes will be needed by the year 2040, and 3,450 more rentals will be needed by the year 2040 to accommodate the Fishers need. I want to be clear that those numbers account for an estimated 1,040 single-family homes just naturally transitioning into rentals. So that was perceived in this housing study and reflected in the numbers we see here, but 13,500 is what we're looking for. As you can imagine, the top niches that need to be fulfilled are senior housing and young adult housing. No surprise there. A consideration of affordable housing, startup housing, of course, and a high-quality rental stock was all specified in the housing study. This is a graph. I hope you can see this. This is a graph from the housing study about home ownership. At the time, they looked at Fishers in the year 2022, just a few years ago. Our home ownership in our community was 77.5% of our population owned a home. The national average at that time was 64%. The Indiana average was just shy of 70. So you can see we're tracking a little higher than both national and state averages. They also projected for us Fishers' homeownership percentage in the year 2040, and they expected that to tick down a little bit to 74.7%, which is still much higher than I would say considerably higher than the national and state average. So I wanted to share that fact with you about how we are with home ownership in our community. But really, the focus of our conversation is going to be about rental housing. So of course, today we're talking about rental housing. Apartments, condos, townhomes, and single-family homes are all part of our rental stock. Today, our focus with this ordinance will focus on both condos, townhomes, and single-family homes. But let's take a deeper dive with single-family home rentals. According to the City of Fishers, there's 2,522 rentals that are single-family homes today. That is 8% of all the single-family homes in the whole city. It is important to note that of those rentals, single-family home rentals, 583 are owned by institutional investors. We've called them corporate investors or Wall Street investors, 583, which is 23% of all the single-family home rentals. So I just wanted to present that and put that in perspective for you. Deeper dive about institutional investors. The 10-year high mark for institutional investors purchasing single-family homes and turning them into rentals was in the year 2021, right during the pandemic. They purchased 150 homes in Fishers, single-family homes, and turned them into rentals. That was an all-time high in the past 10 years. The most recent purchase of institutional investors of single-family homes in Fishers was January 9th, 2023. So it has definitely been a few years since institutional investors have made purchases in Fishers. Maybe that's not surprising because interest rates have gone up, and as we all know, the housing market is very fluid. It ebbs and flows, it changes. But our institutional investors have not made any purchases for a while. And in fact, the institutional investors have sold 18 of the homes that they purchased since September of 2022. We know that for a fact. So again, just wanted to present that to you. Institutional investors has been one of the top headlines of this ordinance. So we want to be sure you have that information about where we are today with that. Rental concerns. These are some of the concerns that have already popped up. Of course, maintenance of rental homes, probably all homes, but exterior maintenance is a concern. Concern that rentals may lower home values. That has been voiced as a concern. High percentages of rentals in some neighborhoods. That is indeed true. Some of those neighborhoods are condos or townhomes, but some of them are our single-family home neighborhoods, and they do have a higher percentage of rentals in their neighborhoods. That's true. And how does rentals, especially converting single-family homes into rentals, how does that impact future home ownership? How does that impact folks that want to purchase instead of rent? So those are some of the concerns that have already bubbled up. Moving on to what the proposed ordinance is. And again, to address some of those concerns, the ordinance itself says the rental cap proposal ensures rentals are maintained and eliminates blight. That's one of the objectives of the new ordinance. Protecting the character of residential neighborhoods is an objective, and of course, also to encourage home ownership. That is all language from the actual ordinance that was presented a few weeks ago at Fishers City Council. So now, unfortunately, no one from the City of Fishers, a representative, could not be here today, so I'm going to do the best I can to represent the ordinance. I will say that there are recordings available on the QR code that you received when you came in. We've got the City of Fishers has presented this information in a webinar and also in front of City Council. That's a video you can watch. So with doing my best, I will share with you a quick information about this ordinance that is being proposed currently. Implications for the city, they do reference the 2022 housing study that I mentioned. Ownership, single-family home ownership opportunities are important. The study that we talked about, this housing study, did recommend back in 2022 a rental registration program. That I do want to focus on that. That was something that was recommended by the outside consultant. The proposal as part of the new ordinance includes that rental registration recommendation and also, of course, the rental permit cap, the 10% cap. So let's talk about that component. The ordinance proposes a permitting system. So if you would like to rent your home, if you do currently or intend to in the future, the proposed ordinance requires you to file for a permit and get a permit approved to rent your property. Permits will not expire until the ownership of the property changes. The registration is like based on the software system. So in terms of collecting and reviewing that data, that should make it a lot easier for our city employees to help crunch those numbers. The rental permit cap is permitted only if your neighborhood has less than a 10% total in the neighborhood of rental properties already. So what that means is if there are more than 10% of the homes in your neighborhood that are already rental properties, your permit to become a rental could be denied. Importantly, this is very important, any rental properties currently today and through the rest of the calendar year will be grandfathered in. So I want to be clear that if your neighborhood is already over 10% and you are renting your property, you will be able to retain that as part of the grandfather clause. You guys, I am going fast and furious, so bear with me. Everyone okay so far? All right, I'm moving fast. As I said, the opportunity to rent your home and get it permitted, but if this ordinance passes, the effective date is January 1st, 2026. So this whole year will be like getting things set up and getting the permit system totally in place and of course communicated to our residents. Importantly, even if your neighborhood is over 10%, you can still rent your property if you fall under these certain exemptions. And quickly they are if you want to rent to a family member, if you're relocating for your job, if you are a military member that has been deployed, if selling your property causes an undue burden, that will be an exemption as well. And if your property has failed to sell in the period of 6 months and you want to roll that back and turn that into a rental, that also would be exempted as well. So those are the exceptions that still a permit would be needed, but you would be able to receive and get approved for that rental permit. Quickly about compliance and enforcement. There are fees if you don't register, and you can see that there, a $250 fine, $1,000 fine if I think a rental is discovered and hasn't been permitted and the neighborhood is over the 10% cap. There'll be inspections, notice of violations. I won't get into this. I think this enforcement piece is still being developed, but very important that the city has already considered how this will actually play out and to be sure that everyone's held accountable but fairly. The application requirements is information. Importantly, there has to be a local contact for the rental property. So that's good too. That really is solving an issue that many neighborhoods and HOAs had. Just identifying who's in charge of that property. The permit should be approved if you meet all the qualifications, and again, if your neighborhood is underneath that 10% rental threshold. This is a little bit about their technology. It is a software system. It sounds pretty good. Sorry, I'm not going to go into details about that, but I will say the city of Fishers has already moved forward with this software and are getting very familiar with it, and it sounds like a good product. Proposed timeline. This is important. This was also in the little handout as you walked in. They expect the next step will be in April. Originally, we thought that the final vote could be as soon as next week. Thankfully, that got pushed back a little bit. So the next time this will be heard will be in front of City Council will be April 21st, and a public hearing will be part of that presentation. A public hearing means that any citizen can step up to the mic and explain their perspective, their idea, their suggestion, their feedback for the City Council and the mayor to consider. And then the registration go live, city officials expect with approval in May, probably, that the registration system go live will start as soon as May or June. And again, it's all like a kind of getting everything started, and then the actual cap will begin on January 1st of 2026. Little transition period, as I mentioned, and January 1st is the official live date. Okay, that concludes the information about Fast and Furious, about the ordinance. I encourage all of you, the city officials does a better job than I presenting that, but I will say I've used their slides and I've listened to their presentation several times. But I do recommend all of you taking a listen to their actual presentation. It's a little bit more robust, especially about the software component. The proposed ordinance, I want to go back now that you've got an understanding generally about the 10% cap, the permit process, and the whole registration system. I want to go back to the concerns that the community has had about rentals, maintenance. Do rentals lower home values? High percentage of rentals in some neighborhoods has been a concern, and impacting opportunities for home ownership. But there has also been some concerns about the ordinance, and I want to mention those. Impacting property rights, limiting who you could sell your home to or what you could do with it. It would potentially limit the supply of rentals when we have a high demand and a deficit, as I mentioned. It could possibly increase rental rates. I think that's simply maybe tapping down supply when demand is still very strong. And some HOAs are supported and have already either attempted or already implemented some sort of rental cap for their neighborhood, so they would have this additional support from the city. Some HOAs have considered a rental cap and have decided that's not right for their neighborhood. So either way, as we know, HOAs and neighborhoods are very diverse in our community. I think we have a diverse spectrum of not only citizens, but HOA approaches on this as well. So I'm going to pause right there. Will you please start thinking about some questions? And if the note card system isn't working, we can use a microphone too, if you wish. But at this point, I would love to invite our panel to take the stage. We have four experts on our panel today. We were trying to create a panel of folks that kind of represented different segments of housing and different expertise, so we're happy to have them today. What I would like to do is, now that we have that background information shared, allow each of our panelists, if you would, each of you, and Meighan, maybe if we could start with you, quick introduction and a hot take of what you see with this ordinance from your perspective. So Meighan, I'll let you start.
Hey everyone, my name's Meighan Wise, and I have been a loving member of Fishers and the community for a very long time, first as a citizen, and then I've been selling real estate as a residential real estate broker for 17 years. I run a large team that manages a lot of home sales in Indianapolis, but we focus a lot on Fishers because we love Fishers, and we have seen the growth in 17 years and it has been exponential. I'm really proud of it. So for us, I run a brokerage called Keller Williams Portfolio. We are based in Fishers. We also have a small office in Geist as well. So we feel like we have a really great pulse on the market, specifically in Fishers. Sold I typically sell about 100 to 150 homes a year. About 80 of those are typically in Fishers. I also am an investor. I own 6 properties in Fishers alone that also I manage and self-manage. So I have a great experience in terms of being a landlord and owning homes in Fishers. I've built homes in Fishers, sold home in Fishers. So I feel like I have a great experience to share what I have seen over the years and what this could possibly do to Fishers market value. And for me, I think my hot take right now is that until we get more information, I don't know if it's going to be a positive or a negative. And I feel like it's just how you create it for your own community. And is it supposed to keep us safe in terms of making sure that we are not taking advantage of because we are such an amazing place to live? And I'm here to represent the voice of the everyday seller that I represent, and to how does this affect my clients wanting to stop and make their home a rental home for them rather than selling it. There's so much equity that has been built over the years due to our fast appreciation in the city. And so what can we do as homeowners to keep the money in Fishers and grow Fishers more? And that's where what my point being here would be today is to make sure that we're all protected and continue to watch the city grow.
Excellent. Thank you.
It's a hard act to follow. My name is Andrea Davis. I'm the executive director of HAND Incorporated, which is a nonprofit based in Noblesville. We are Hamilton County's affordable housing developer. We build affordable rental housing for individuals and families who earn no more than 60% of area median income. So these are folks who most likely aren't mortgage ready, aren't in a position to buy a home. They need to rent, and the luxury apartments that we are so fond of building here in the suburbs really are out of their price range. These are service workers, home health care aides, school bus drivers, folks who work in our community but don't necessarily have the earning potential of some of the white collar workers. My hot take, I'm also a resident of Fishers. I've lived here since 2003, so 22 years. Our take is any policy that restricts the supply of rental housing is going to impact affordability at some point somehow. As Jocelyn in the housing study pointed out, we have an undersupply of rental housing already. And so to further, to put artificial restrictions on that could have long-term implications on affordability. That's my hot take. We can talk more.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janet Pritchett. I am a 21-year resident of Fishers. I am a mortgage advisor. I have been for the last 5 years. And most recently in the last year have done also not only residential lending, but also investment lending. So I feel like I have a good take on what investors are looking for in central Indiana. And I think why specifically for me, our neighborhood they rejected a 10% cap with our HOA. So, this feels to me like we're going backwards a little bit because our neighborhood banded together and said, we don't want this. And I also am coming up on being an empty nester, and my house is almost paid off. And I personally would like the option to be able to use my home to create some passive income for myself and my family. And so I feel like that is a huge concern for me and others. And, that's, I just think it's real important to discuss this before moving forward with a vote for the whole city.
Oh, hi, my name is Steve Ladig. I've been a Fishers resident since 1992. I'm definitely I am a real estate broker. I would call myself not a typical realtor. I spent time as an auditor with PricewaterhouseCoopers. And then 20 years ago, I became a realtor and also a property manager. And I also own currently 25 rental properties in the area. Majority of them are in Fishers. And I also manage other people's rental properties as well. But my hot take may be a little longer than the others, but I'll try to be brief. But I do believe it's an infringement on everyone's property rights as far as dictating the homeowner's ability of who they can sell to and whether they can lease a property or not. Also, it's a major interference of the free market. There are many unintended consequences that can occur, and that's what hopefully we can go through some of those today on really interfering with that free market and not allowing people to lease their homes and for investors to buy homes. On average, Fisher's real estate has experienced appreciation at 66.1% over the last 6 years. The national average is 63.2, so we're pretty much right on average. I'm concerned that the Fishers homeowners will experience a loss in future appreciation and maybe even see some depreciation. Each homeowner on average could lose up to $52,000 in value based off my calculations on an average home. And there's actually 17 neighborhoods that have over 30% rentals. Those neighborhoods have appreciated at over 98% appreciation. Those folks could lose up to $88,000 of their value. So I'm definitely concerned about them as well. As many of you know, the IRS tax code has incentives for homeowners and investors to buy homes to do that. And the reason for that is to give people an incentive, give them an incentive to buy a home and lease to people in need and so forth. And this would significantly restrict that ability for that to happen. Individuals that purchase a home, for example, individuals who purchase a home in 2020 and prior, before a lot of this appreciation, if they had locked into a low interest rate, which a lot of people have, if they would turn their home into a rental property on average, they could make a 59.5% return. So what I wanted to educate people on is you're really sitting on a gold mine. Why sell your home to an investor? Lease it out yourself. Fishers needs 3,450 additional rentals, and let's enrich the residents of Fishers and allow them to lease their homes out as well. So, in my experience as a property manager, we're already seeing a shortage of rentals as well. We just listed a property recently, and we got 8 to 9 applications. In the past, we got 1 or 2. We're already seeing property managers and property owners increasing rental rates significantly, and I think this cap's going to make rentals skyrocket, which would really not allow people to start living in Fishers. I know there are many people, when they come to Fishers, they have to rent, and if we don't allow that, they're going to pick another community outside of Fishers. They're going to develop their roots, and they're going to end up buying a home there versus Fishers. So it's another unintended consequences of this happening. Yep. And then also renters that rather than implementing this cap, there are major unintended consequences. There are 583 institutional investors accountable. There are 583 institutional investors there's 583 homes that have been purchased by institutional investors. Of those, 95% of them are 3 companies. So, my recommendation is, and I guess my question for the city too, is we should really be spending our time in dealing with those 3 large companies and holding them accountable, have strict code enforcement, put liens on those properties, make them mow their lawns. If they're not, let's send the city out there and mow it and send them a big bill and so forth. So I'm going to wrap this up. My other recommendations beyond strict code enforcement is encouraging homeowners, as I had mentioned before, to lease their homes, and let's kind of make Fishers, let's allow Fishers residents to thrive instead of having Wall Street. Right now, Wall Street is thriving. If this rental cap goes into place, most likely the rental rates are going to skyrocket, which will really make Wall Street richer. And also it's going to, if you think about it, these Wall Street investors, if rental rates go up, they're going to make a lot of money on those houses. And so they'll be more apt not to sell them. Right now, they're in the selling mode. They've sold 18 of these properties just recently. So if we put this rental cap in, the rental rates go up, they're going to probably sell homes in other communities. So it could backfire on them. So sorry, it was so long, but wanted to kind of get that out. So I've got a lot of information. I've done a lot of research on this.
Don't worry, we're coming back to all you guys in a minute. And we're going to get to some questions. Before we start moving to questions, I just wanted to give, if there's anyone here in the audience who is not part of our panel today, but represents an association or part of the housing industry, I did want to give you an opportunity to say hello and give your hot take. Chris, would you like to? And if there's anyone else, please let me pass the mic to Chris, and you can say hello, and we'd love your hot take as well.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Appreciate it. My name is Chris Pryor. I'm the Chief Advocacy Officer with the Mybor Realtor Association. We've been working with the city for over 2 years on this. We've had numerous conversations with the mayor and his team, and I would like to compliment the city. Has been very open about working with us on this and listening to our concerns and input along the way. We've had really good dialogue. However, having said that and seeing the final proposal, we have determined that we do need to oppose the current proposal. We think there are several concerns. You've heard some of those tonight already been mentioned by 3 of our members that are sitting on the panel here. But it really impacts private property rights, restricts an owner's ability to be able to use their property as they see fit. We think it severely limits housing options, especially in a very difficult market where it's more and more challenging every single day for people to find housing options, not only just here in Fishers, but in all of our communities. And it also interferes, as Steve has mentioned a couple of times, with the free market, and we think that there are several potential unintended consequences, such as increased rent rates, which could result from this. So our association has taken a stance to oppose this. We've also, there are a couple of points that I would mention as well. The city has repeatedly kind of talked about the objective of this is to really address problem properties, property maintenance issues. I would say that the city already has a property maintenance ordinance in place that, if properly enforced, could address a lot of these. The mayor recently spoke at his State of the City about how the city has recently stepped up the enforcement of the city's nuisance ordinance and has seen tremendous compliance results from that stepped up enforcement. We'd like to see them do the same thing with the property maintenance ordinance before we start looking at adopting new policies. The other thing that I would mention is there's been a big focus on this about corporate investors. The city, I think, has kind of softened their comments on that here recently, but going back to 2 years ago, there's been a lot of focus on institutional corporate investors in the marketplace. As was mentioned here earlier, that's an issue that's happened in the past. The market has changed significantly, and those investors are not purchasing like they were before. There were very few, if any, institutional investors over the last 2 years, and in fact, as it was mentioned, there were actually more sales by those institutional investors here in the last 2 years than there were purchases. So we think the city is really trying to address a problem that was really a phenomenon of the past when market conditions were different, and we really think that we need to move on down the road and look at other issues. So those are a couple of comments I would share. We do have some other concerns that we have identified and shared with the city as well. And I would just say again, we thank the city for taking the time to receive input. We do know that they could have pushed this through rather quickly, and they have taken the time to at least receive some input and have delayed the vote until April. So we do appreciate that.
Thank you, Chris. We invited a few other representatives from associations and organizations today. I want to be sure I'm not missing anyone. Okay, with that being said, let's make sure residents, now that you have an opportunity to ask questions, it's really up to you. If you want to take the mic, I can hand you the mic and you can ask questions of our panel and let's get that started. Or if you prefer to write it on the note card and I can read it for you, whichever you prefer. So who would like to get the ball rolling? Go, Ross.
Yeah, hi. I'm Ross Renard, property owner here. And I just want to, I'm curious your thoughts on, so I have concerns about the cap for, the reasons, it restricts property rights. We actually sought out a house that wasn't in an HOA because we didn't want to have those kinds of restrictions. So we wouldn't really want that. But right now, we actually have a lack of housing. And it seems like this is going to add a restriction onto that. So I'm curious, are we looking at the wrong thing here? Instead, are we adding restrictions on a type of housing when we should be looking instead focusing on increasing housing supply through maybe even removing some restrictions like reducing single-family zoning or removing costly parking mandates or parking minimums that take up so much space in our city, or investing in other forms of transportation that don't take up as much space, like walking, biking, public transit. So that our city can continue to evolve like it has here without having an artificial restriction on that. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. Should we be focusing instead on increasing housing through those kind of things?
Let's take it.
I'm the obvious, and I admittedly have a bias because in addition to working at Hand is the provides the staff for the Hamilton County Housing Collaborative, which is a larger kind of ad hoc group of individuals and organizations that want to kind of address our 30,000-foot housing issues. And we firmly believe that in order to thrive, our county needs a wide variety of housing options along the entire housing continuum. If you think about your life cycle, there are different points at your life in which you need different housing types. There's certainly, we all aspire to reach a point in our life where a $475,000 house is our preferred single-family detached home is where we live, but not everybody is there. And in order to be a healthy, thriving community where people can live throughout their lives, we need to have that entry-level home for somebody just starting out, the rental for a family, going through a life-changing circumstance that maybe previously lived in a home and now needs to do a rental. If we make people move every time a circumstance in their life changes, we're really not going to build a very caring, thriving community. So from our perspective, we absolutely should be having more conversations about how to increase the types, not just the supply, but the types, duplexes. Duplexes exist in other communities and they're still pretty thriving. So, there's lots of other things we can do if government wants to involve themselves in the housing market that would help as opposed to hurt affordability. Again, my perspective as somebody who works in the affordable housing space.
Yeah, and I could add one thing to that. I did hear people say, rental rates, they're so high in Fishers. But I actually, took that and ran some numbers just a few days ago. And, a starter home in Fishers right now, on average, it's about $1,900 a month. So that same house, I ran the numbers, that homeowner, they're going to have to put 20% down, which is $60,000. They're with the rental payment, repairs and maintenance and all that, it's $2,200. So they're going to be paying, $300 more to buy the home than renting. But definitely, there needs to be affordable housing from a rental standpoint and from a purchase standpoint.
And for the history in our industry, we know that part of what's driven up the property values has been lack of inventory. I mean, we've dealt with
Supply and demand,
right? We've dealt with that for the several years. If you ask any real estate agent in the 10-mile radius, they're going to tell you we just need more homes. So we need to keep up with that. And I do know, and so Jocelyn maybe or Steve maybe if you know when developers come in and they're building homes, they've rejected a cap out of the gate. So that's something that they're, even developers are looking at, we don't want to restrict this for who can purchase these homes. So I'm not sure that the answers your questions, but it's information that, we need more housing in Fishers, period. And restricting them, even when you're developing them, is not going to, it's just going to exacerbate the problem.
Okay, I look around and I see I'm a minority. Okay, and I'm a minority in skin color. I'm probably a minority in this room in age. I'm almost 80 years old, and there is very few affordable housing for seniors. I live in Sun Lake. Jocelyn is my neighbor. I moved in there in 2001, where the rent at that time was below $1,000. And because I've been there so long and I'm a good renter, my rent has only increased, a little bit. Matter of fact, the rent only increases enough that I can't move anywhere else for what they raise my rent. So to live in Fishers as a senior citizen, there needs to be some focus on people like myself that are on a fixed income, a pension, Social Security, that kind of thing. And I would like to know, especially the lady who is an affordable housing expert, what's being done to address that?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are always organizations like ours. There aren't a lot of nonprofit developers like us. There are more for-profit businesses, like Real America and Woda Cooper and those sort of things that develop affordable housing. We're always looking for opportunities to do it. And we know Hamilton County needs more, not just Fishers, but all of Hamilton County. I wish it were as easy as kind of waving a magic wand and saying we need more, so let's build more, because it's literally everything from finding the land at a price that we can afford. When it comes to new development, anything that doesn't already have something built on it needs to be rezoned, which puts it out in the public, and then we get a lot of thoughts about the work that we do, and it kind of distracts from the issue, which is providing homes for people who need it. Not, like I said, not everybody wants to own a home or can own a home. A lot of folks, kind of reach a point in their life where they're like, just give me a place to live and take care of stuff when it breaks, right? And that's actually Hand started out building for low-income seniors. But I think, some folks may want to own homes as seniors, may want to continue to be homeowners. I just don't think it's anybody's place to say, like, there's only one answer. Everybody has to own a home, or everybody has to live in a senior community that costs $4,000 a month or whatever. That's not an option for everyone. So we would be happy to build more. I think the other thing is an opportunity to sort of convert existing housing, what we call naturally affordable, because it's a little bit older. What Jocelyn was referring to earlier about some of the older housing stock sort of becoming rental housing down the road. This proposal obviously would limit that, because most likely the older housing is going to be in a neighborhood that's already at its cap, right? I don't know off the top of my head how much of Fishers' existing housing stock is appropriate for like seniors, right? Because when the building boom happened, I don't think anybody was building thinking, hey, let's build this so seniors can age in place, right? They were like, let's throw this thing up as fast as we can. So, but to the extent that you can use sort of existing housing stock and repurpose it for seniors, this proposal would limit that. And like I said, if the government wants to insert itself in housing and try to solve problems in the market, we could really use some help, with affordable housing, right? I would love for a community like Fishers to say, hey, we really think this is important for our seniors, for our residents. If you're going to bring a development to Fishers, we're going to expect some of it to be affordable. But we're not here to pipe dream. We're here to talk about this
And I think
proposal.
on that point too, dealing with a lot of investors myself, investors are looking for properties that cash flow. And right now in Fishers, you can't buy a home, and to Steve's point about the mortgage prices, your monthly mortgage payment, you have to increase rent to be able to cover that mortgage payment to even make a profit. So the investors that I see are looking at Fountain Square and South Broad Ripple and those places where they can make some money. They're not looking at Fishers. That ship has sailed. But then you get a neighborhood like mine where my mortgage is about to be paid off, and if I'm going to rent my property, I could rent it at a lower rate because I'm not trying to hit a bottom dollar. So, in my neck of the woods, that area is an area that, could be more affordable to people if given the opportunity. But if there's a cap, then I can't do that, and neither can my neighbors. So we're really limiting that, and that's a shame.
No, I trying to think about as I go into my clients' homes, my point of walking into a home, especially in Fishers where I've lived and loved and played and own investments currently, is like, can I make this real estate property work for the owner? I teach, our brokerage goes in and helps people realize that what you're sitting on is an amazing asset that can create more money for you in the future if you're able to hold on to it. So our first like cycle of walking into a home and talking to a homeowner is to say, hey, can this become a great rental for you? Can you keep it and still move on to your next home or your next journey or out of state? And what does that look like for you? So for us, I am teaching and coaching everyone to consider their asset to be something that they can keep. So the cap allows us to maybe question, like, that's not going to be for everybody. However, unfortunately, it's not for everybody to keep their home and keep it as a rental, like Janet spoke of. It's just not for everybody, unfortunately, either. And so the flip side of it is, was that 10% cap, is it keeping the homes that are in the affordable housing? Is it keeping it available to those buyers who can purchase it? So we have specialty buyers agents on our team that are having an extremely hard time finding homes under $300,000 in Fishers. Extremely difficult. And so if these institutional buyers are blocked, then it allows the everyday guy to come and buy and live in, the young kid that just graduates, or the couple that sends their kids to college and want to downsize. We cannot find anything under 300. And if we do, there's 10 offers on it, right? And so I want that 250, 275 ranch to go to somebody that lives in Fishers, works in Fishers, and wants to purchase it. I don't want it to go to an investor, but it's not about like wants and dreams, right? It's about what's best for the community overall. And I do trust that the city has put a lot of time and money and energy into this. And if it's there to protect us, then maybe that's the right thing, but also, can it be changed in the future? How serious is it? Is this a problem for right now? And can it be changed if it's not a problem in the future? I just want to know that my clients can say, I can rent this if I want to, or I can sell it to somebody if I want to. But I also believe if you want to sell it to an institutional buyer, you also should have that right as well, as long as there's restrictions on those institutional buyers, because I've dealt with those tenants. They cannot get the institutional buyer's rental management to call them back. They can't get a repair done. They are upset themselves that the grass isn't cut. They're embarrassed, and it's not the tenant's fault. They've signed a contract and they can't get a hold of anybody from the Wall Street buyer.
That's an operational issue, though.
Correct.
Like, that's a poor property management.
Yeah, and institutional buyers and a lot of local landlords don't care about the operations. And then I just feel it's also unfair that a tenant, or considering tenants to be someone that's going to be a subpar citizen of Fishers. We deal with a lot of professors at Ball State or at IUPUI who are transitional, a lot of transitional nurses who don't want to buy, they want to be here for a year or two, and a lot of divorcees, unfortunately. They want their kids to stay in the same school district, and they can't move to the other side of Fishers where their apartments are. They can, they would like to stay where their kids can stay close to the marital home. So I like that idea, to make sure that we can keep rentals available for those that want it for their time in the life that need it.
I appreciate you voicing your concern about affordable housing, because if you look at the homes that already have 10% rentals, those are the affordable neighborhoods in Fishers. The ones that have less than 10% are your higher end homes that really don't have many rentals at all. So this 10% cap is going to significantly reduce the number of affordable housing that could be rented. The
Because
people
once they
that,
turn over, they can't redo, like,
Right.
they might be grandfathered in now, but if the cap's in place, they won't be able to turn that back
Right.
into a rental.
they will not. So I do have concerns about affordable housing with this cap, because right now, if that cap wasn't in place, people could continue to buy in those neighborhoods. The people that live in those neighborhoods could turn their homes into rentals as well. Also, the average rental rate in Fishers right now is $2,239 a month. In the last 6 years, the rental rates increased 35.9%, which is pretty close to the national average. But in 2021 and 2022, we saw rental rates increase by 18 to 19%. And that was hard. We had to go to our tenants. In the past, we rarely would increase rental rates. If we did, it was a very small amount, but we had to go to them with significant increases. And what was the driver of that? A majority of it was the property taxes. The values of the homes, assessed values, went up so much, the bureaucrats did not adjust the rate proportionally, and everybody, whether you're a homeowner or a property owner, you have to pay property taxes. And I don't know if you're all aware, if you own a rental property, you cannot file a homestead exemption, so your real estate taxes are double, and they're going to have to pass that on to the tenant as well, which creates a tough for the affordability.
In 2020 was a 2-bedroom for $1,400 a month, and in 2021 it jumped to $1,800 a month for a 2-bedroom in downtown Fishers. But my property taxes went up, my HOA went up, and I was able to get that rental rate and had 10 applicants in a day.
Well, when you don't have enough, it's supply and demand, right? We don't have enough to meet the demand, so when you can get one, you're gonna pay
take
whatever
it.
you gotta pay.
Thank you, panel. Let's find other questions. And let me go here and then there. And again, I'll welcome you if you want to write them down or take the mic, whatever you're comfortable with. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michelle Miller. I've been a resident of Fishers since 2018, lived in Carmel prior to that. So is that something that, I don't know if you guys can answer this, but that is something that if it is a rental and it's taxed at twice the rate, has the city looked at what kind of financial impact that could have on them and what that in turn has on the schools? Because if we're all owner occupied, except for 10%, where if we're a little bit higher and we're collecting more tax revenue, it's like you said, where does that get paid down the line? Who's going to make the cut then to make up that shortfall?
I will jump in and say some of these questions might be better geared for the city of Fishers to answer, and we will capture all of these. And at the end of the presentation, I have a portal to accept questions, but that's a good question. Panel, do you have any take on that?
That's a perfect question, because I actually just did this research a few days ago and I supplied it to the mayor of Fishers. So there's two parts to it. Is you're exactly right. As the number of rentals reduces, the tax revenues for the city of Fishers is going to decrease because they are going to lose that double taxation. So, that will be a gradual decrease in tax revenues. My biggest concern is my studies have shown that I've shared before is that on average, homes in Fishers have appreciated 66.1%. The 9 communities that currently have rental caps appreciated at 46.9%. This is all over the last 6 years. If you extrapolate that back, if you assume with this rental cap, values go back, the total valuation on all of the homes in Fishers would come down $1.88 billion. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but over the last 6 years, it went up 66%. If we would have had rental caps, it probably would have been 46%. If it would have been, that's $1.88 billion of assessed value, which would be taken away from the schools and the city. So that is a concern. It's not going to be 1.88, but it's definitely, I think that's a great question. I think the city will suffer suffer from this in lost tax revenue.
So great question, and we'll pass that along to the city as well. Let me pass the mic over here. I think you were next.
Hello, I'm Mark Haley. I live on 126th Street. Family's owned the property since the mid-60s. So used to be out in the country. So one of the things that concerns me is the point you're making about the fact that a number of the neighborhoods that are going to go over 10% are where you're going to possibly find lower rentals and rental rates. A lot of the new development and the huge homes that are going in are not going to be in that group. So who's driving this legislation? Who are the stakeholders? Why would they be pushing this? Because it doesn't make sense to me on the surface that if you want a diverse community and bringing people in who can work here and live here and not work in the highest paid jobs here, who's driving this decision?
I mean, the research, was it 2019 was the year that the most institutional investors bought, correct? So, back before the housing prices increased or right-sized, and interest rates were still very low, investors came in and bought houses out from underneath, regular home buyers, because they could buy with cash, they could buy over ask, they could, no inspection. I mean, they just, so they came and gobbled it all up. So there definitely is a problem, and that did affect us greatly. And so I see the reason for the concern, and the community did talk to the city a lot about that. And so I think that originally was the driver.
Yeah, I think they heard from HOAs that, hey, we can't.
And that's why we were so concerned, I think. If I might speak for our small group of citizens that got together, we're seeing it as not an issue. The investors that I speak with are not corporate investors. They're average Joes, like you and me, wanting to buy, an investment property in central Indiana, and they can't afford Fishers, and they can't because of the price and the interest rates. So to me, it seems like solving a problem that no longer exists. Now, should interest rates drop way below, I don't know, nobody who's forecasting this would ever say that out loud. We don't think that that'll ever go back to that level. So even if we're trying to solve a problem that could happen in the future, it just seems a little preemptive and a little too late. Like preemptive for that and a little too late for what happened previously.
Yeah, and that's what I heard is that the reason they wanted this cap is that there were quite a few people, during the post-COVID and COVID area that they kept getting bought out, overbid. Somebody would put an offer in, there'd be 10 offers, and they would go with the cash buyer, which a lot of times was the institutional investors. They would win out. So I think that's the main driver. But then also, I think there were complaints that the city actually put a couple years ago about that they had statistics that rentals create more police calls and rentals also create more code violations. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe those are the kind of the three things. And just recently, I think they're maybe going away from just talking about institutional investors, but really just saying, we want a community of homeowners versus a community of rental properties.
And I think there are some ways that we could, really affect this change a little differently. If we're really talking about, institutional investors or corporate investors, there's a way if we're able to cap this by, rental registration and codes and all this stuff, maybe it's just maybe we reduce corporate investors rather than everyday investors, and you can do that by showing assets. And if we're talking about affordable housing, I think the city often has some excess funds. They give grants for beautification. They give grants to nonprofits. What about a down payment assistance program for Fishers that if, you're a first-time home buyer, you get a certain amount of money to buy in Fishers. So if we're really trying to increase home ownership, first-time home ownership, young families, if we're trying to get those folks in, there's other ways that we can do that to help them rather than reducing rentals.
Question, Michael, do you want to? Or anyone? And I do want to say we're asking questions, but we're also sharing our feedback, giving ideas of alternatives, like all of it. So yes, no? Would you like to? Yes. Pardon me, Ross.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I guess my take, it sounds like I'm preaching to the choir, but I think Fishers sees this as a way of getting people to register and making money with this proposal. I kind of think this is the camel's nose under the tent, so to speak, because if they're going to want to know, who's renting, they can generate fees, they can tax, the mom and pop investors, which.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you?
Sure.
Right now, the proposal has $0 to apply for a permit.
But there's fees for the penalties right now. Yes. So that's revenue coming in. If they enforce it, yes. And, I see the city talking out both sides of their mouths because there's 15 or 20 houses just across the street that were torn down. And I don't know, pardon my ignorance, I don't know if that's going to be condominiums or rental units or what that is. So, they're saying we need more housing, but then they tear down the affordable housing. So.
Comments. Neighbors, what other questions, comments? Norma again? Okay, Norma, I guess you get it.
Well, I just have one comment, and I hear people say they don't want Fishers to end up like Lawrence. And of course, we know the diversity of Lawrence. And to me, that's a way of saying we don't want those people coming in to our community from Indianapolis. We don't want those type of people. And I'm probably the only one in here brave enough to say that. Yeah, because I know that that's what they're thinking. When they say something like that, that's another way. I'm old enough to remember restrictive covenants that they had where Black folks and Jews couldn't buy homes in certain areas. So this is just another way of eliminating certain people in their community. As far as I'm concerned, I see it coming like a train.
I'd like to say, from the different perspective, I just spent a week in Texas with some great real estate influencers, advisors, and people that really understand real estate at a high level, on a national level, international level. And from that perspective, we are still considered extremely affordable. We are still considered a place where Bedrock and these big institutional buyers still want to come, whether it's now or in 5 years. We are still seen as a great place to invest, Midwest, great parks and cities, super affordable. You talk about a 1% rule, and Indianapolis still has it. You can still maybe find it in Fishers, but right now it's a 1.5% rule for the investor's mindset. I have international investors I represent. I have national investors I represent. They all want to invest here. So I do want you guys to take the lid off a little bit and know that that money is always coming. We have calls 3 to 5 a week. How can I buy here? So it is something that I'm cognizant of, and my passion of teaching our brokerage is let's get the everyday citizen in Indianapolis and Hamilton County and Fishers to become the investor if they want to be, rather than taking all of this international money and national money. So it is something that be cognizant of, that we are a target, and we probably will be for a long time.
Thank you.
Yeah, the properties, to add to that, the properties that I manage, a majority for other homeowners, a majority of those I'm kind of managing the retirement, because in many cases, their home and then they moved into another home. They turned it into a rental and so forth. Many of the homeowners are people that own just one home, two homes, or whatever. They're not. There's only 23% are institutional investors. So, and I think many of my owners are definitely open to leasing so long as the credentials are there, leased to anyone. So.
I've been here about 15 years, owned multiple properties, sold them all just because I was done it for 20 years. But I think there's a dark side, like what Norma touched on to this, and there's this thing that renters are bad. And I was on my HOA board, and I felt it without those words being said, and I vehemently was against the cap in our HOA, and of course it passed. But I think there's a whole nother dark side to this, is that there's this community, well, not community, but certain groups believe that tenants are bad, and that just has to go away. There's also some civil rights issues involved here. The Fifth Amendment, everybody knows what that is about, pleading the fifth, but it also inherently has property rights to it. That's how when you get your property taken through eminent domain, things like that, there's a loss of use section of the Fifth Amendment that specifically, if you lose the loss of use to your property, that is a violation of your civil rights. And that's what the city's doing here. They're taking away the ability to earn income off of your property. And then that doesn't even get into the Fourth Amendment, where how are they going to find out who's renting property? I've rented properties and they had no idea I was renting properties. Like, are they going to have complaints from citizens saying, oh, they're renters? Are they going to have police show up and investigate your property to see if there's non-owners living there? There's a host of civil rights issues on top of just the economic, downturn also. So.
Comments. It's almost time to wrap. I want to give our panel an opportunity to make any last comments. But before we do that, I just want to be sure this is your opportunity to ask questions or provide feedback. And then I do have a little wrap. It's really important to me that you don't leave here before you know what the next steps are and how you can get involved and have your perspective shared with the decision makers. So it's a beautiful evening outside, so we're going to try to wrap quickly. I'm looking at all those people on the trail that are in the sunshine. It's great. Steve, can you do a quick wrap? Any last thoughts? And we'll go down the line and then take it from there.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone's time and on this. And, I think, whether you're for it or against it, I think, I recommend voicing your opinion to your city council members as well as to the mayor, and Jocelyn's done a great job with the little piece and with the QR code with that information on how to get more involved and to communicate, whether you're for or against it and the reason why. I think that can go a long way, but I think hopefully you can all, spread what you've learned here, is spread the word to your neighbors and so forth to get them more involved. But, I think what I would really like is just to educate the citizens and residents of Fishers on this issue, because it really comes back to, if you ask anybody, do you want rentals in your neighborhood? No, I don't want rentals in my neighborhood. That's why most people are going to say, but people don't understand the unintended consequences. And that's where I think we really need to get that word out to educate people so that they are making the right decision. And obviously the decision is not in the hands of the citizens. This isn't going to go to a referendum. The decision makers are the 9 Fishers council members who right now, I believe, I'm not going to speculate, but those are the ones that are going to make the decision on this. So.
And I would like to say that I think, and I think just specifically because it's something that happened to me, is, my neighborhood did not vote in favor of this cap. And I think that some of the proponents, and we talked about why is it coming, I know that some of the HOAs were having trouble getting engagement. And I think some of that speaks to what they want. If they voted it down or they weren't engaged, maybe it wasn't as important to them. So bringing it to be a citywide cap concerns me about property rights, obviously values, and also affordability. So I do think, to echo what Steve said, please, if you can, share the information. I think it's important for us to go talk to the city council, email them, go to the meeting in April, and like, if whether you're for or against, be informed and make sure that you have your voices heard.
Here, here. Yes, so my takeaway is we need more options, not fewer. Restrictions are just going to impact affordability. Renters are not bad people. I have been a renter in my life. Again, you know, you're in different places in your life. I've been a renter. The Carmel, Mayor Finkham in Carmel, when she was elected, appointed a housing task force to kind of examine the housing situation, because during the campaign, she heard a lot about affordable housing. During that, they met, I think, for 6 or 8 months, or I guess 6 months or so, and came up with a recommendation. And there was a lot of renters are bad rhetoric, thank you for that, coming from the public. And one of the task force members is a Carmel city councilor who, because of his life circumstances, rents. And after, 3 or 4 meetings of hearing that, he finally said, we got to stop this assumption that just because someone rents, they're not invested in their community, because I am on the Carmel City Council and I'm a renter. So I think we really have to recognize that, like, your decision to rent, there are a lot of things that go into that. And just the fact that you're a renter does not make you bad, doesn't make you transient, doesn't make you one political party or the other. It just means right now, that's the best housing option for you. And then before I step off my soapbox, I am going to reiterate what these people said. I am thrilled to see so many people out learning about this tonight. I think the reason that things like this come up and they sort of get ushered through very quickly as if, well, everybody agrees on this, let's just do it, is because elected officials really only hear from one side, right? For the example I gave about, affordable housing development, they don't hear from people who are for it. They hear from people who are against it. And if they get 20 phone calls from people who are against it, they assume everyone's against it. So my message about this issue and all other issues is, whether you're for it or against it, let them know. It's like when you go to a restaurant and you have really crappy service, you're like, hey, if you don't talk to the manager, you're on Yelp, you're whatever. Like, does anybody do that when they have awesome service? Like, let's normalize that, right? Like, for it, against it, whatever. Tell your elected officials how you feel. Otherwise, they're just going to assume that those voices that they hear are the only voices out there. And I don't think that's the case. Thank you, sorry.
Well, thank you guys for coming, and it's been a pleasure to kind of talk it out, and I love the fact that we all could be here and talk it out. I think that's a really cool thing, that we live in a country that allows us to do that. And I want to share that, does anybody in here on their HOA board? I was. So one, who's a realtor friend of mine. So I just feel like it's concerning that there's concerns, but your voice can be heard in the HOA community. And I've experienced in 17 years extreme problems in that area where buyers and sellers do not feel like they can get support through their HOA manager or that community within the HOA. And so if you have certain rights and you want to get those rights explained, why are we not on the board of directors? Why are we not the president of the HOA saying what we want to happen in the community? I feel like that's a place to start if you don't like what's happening in your community. And I just think it's a great idea that we're here to talk about it. And I'm concerned that at the end of the day, the buyers cannot purchase in Fishers because there's not a lot available under that $300K price point. I don't want institutional buyers to buy these houses. I want the everyday, the teacher. I'm a former teacher. To buy a $300,000 house was a dream of mine, and I did it, and I was very proud of that when I was a young teacher. And I want those opportunities for those kind of people in our community who have a set budget. And so if this cap allows people to purchase, I think it's great. If it restricts us from doing what we want with our own home, I think that's that's also a problem. But if you are able to work around those restrictions like military, we've had a lot of clients who have to keep their home, move for military and come back. Those kind of items are on the ordinance that help. So I think you have to educate yourself and know that I think everybody is trying to make Fishers better. And it's just how do we get there? And I think being more involved in your HOA, whether you're a tenant or whether you're a homeowner, go to those HOA meetings. I've attended, nobody goes, and nobody actually pushes any kind of policy through. And then you just have that one person who has power, and then we're all here all over again, and I think that's where it really can start in your HOA community. I tell everyone to get on that. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I do want to recognize the folks in the room that are HOA leadership, either current or past. That is saints work. So thank you. For you, thank you. Let's thank our panel. Thank you all very, very much for joining us today. I have a few last notes so that you know what's happening next. The little flyer that we had out there for you to take, if there's plenty extra, if you'd like to take a handful with you and share those with your neighbors or whoever, you are welcome to do so. We've created a website, fishersrentalcap.com, because until today, there was no one place to get all this information all together. So it has links to videos and audio. Larry Landon's here. He did a podcast the other day. There's a link to that. City employees' presentation of the ordinance, that's there for you in the links. And then the documents, of course, the actual ordinance language and the presentations and there's a fact sheet, there's all sorts of good stuff. That is also the place that you can find the video of our event here today, so we can share that with others. So I wanted to direct your attention to that. Again, you've already heard it. Please have your voice heard directing your comments to the city councilors and Mayor Fadness. There will be a community comment section at the end of the next council meeting, which is Monday, March 17th, a week from tonight. Community comment is an open mic at the very end of the city council meeting where any citizen can talk about anything. So that opportunity is open to you. In addition, the official public hearing for the ordinance will be on April 21st at the city council meeting when the ordinance receives its second reading. And then what is anticipated is the final vote would happen at the next city council meeting, which is May 19th. So almost always there's no public hearing or public comment at that moment. So you've got a few opportunities and I want to be sure you're aware of them. Importantly, new news that just happened today. The City of Fishers did create a webpage with information. They have linked to information as well as they did a webinar today. So videos there. So I do want to make sure you know that because it's not on the little flyer you have. fishersin.gov rental registration is where you can find that information. So good information. We cannot have too much access to information about a big decision like this. So, well, with that, I just thank you all so very much. It's a beautiful evening, and I'm really glad that you're here tonight to join us, have your voice heard, learn, and just thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate it, and thank you to our panel as well. Thank you. Thanks, you.